I don't need anything but you, the mountain man spoke to the obese girl. He only wants her. The afternoon sun beat down on the dusty road outside Copper Springs, New Mexico Territory, August 1882. Rose Sullivan wiped sweat from her brow and shifted the heavy basket of laundry she carried. At 22, she'd spent the last 3 years working as a washerwoman, taking in clothes from the town's miners, shopkeepers, and saloon girls. It was hard work that paid little, but it was honest. More importantly, it kept her fed and housed in the small room behind Mrs. Chen's laundry, better than the alternatives available to an obese girl with no family and no prospects. She was walking the back road to the creek when she heard it, a pained braying that made her stop in her tracks. Following the sound, Rose discovered a mule standing in a ravine beside the road, favoring its left front hoof. The animal was magnificent, a large, dark-coated mule with intelligent eyes that watched her warily as she approached. "Easy there," Rose said softly, setting down her laundry basket. "Let me see what's wrong." The mule snorted and took a step back, clearly distrustful of humans. Rose could see something glinting in its hoof, metal of some kind, probably a nail or piece of wire. "I know you're scared, but that's got to hurt something terrible," Rose continued in that same gentle tone. She'd always had a way with animals, even as a child when her father's horses would calm under her touch. "Let me help you." She moved slowly, hands extended so the mule could see she meant no harm. When she reached for the injured hoof, the mule jerked back and attempted to kick her. Rose stepped aside just in time. "I understand. You don't know me, but I promise I'm trying to help." She tried again, this time managing to grasp the hoof before the mule could pull away. She could see it clearly now, a long, rusty nail driven deep into the soft part of the hoof. The mule tried to kick again, connecting with Rose's shoulder this time, but she held firm. I know, but if I leave this, you could get an infection. Just hold still for one more moment." With steady pressure, Rose worked the nail free. The mule brayed in pain, but seemed to understand she was helping because it stopped trying to kick. Blood and pus oozed from the wound. It had been there for days by the look of it. Rose pulled off her apron and tore it into strips. She had a small bottle of carbolic acid in her basket. Mrs. Chen insisted all the laundry workers carry it for disinfecting stubborn stains. Now, Rose used it to clean the mule's wound, murmuring soothing words as the animal flinched. "There we go, that's the worst of it. Now let me wrap this to keep it clean." She bandaged the hoof with strips of her apron, tying it securely but not too tightly. Then she retrieved her canteen and poured water into her cupped hands, offering it to the mule. The animal drank gratefully, and when it finished, it gently nuzzled Rose's shoulder, the same shoulder it had kicked moments before, as if apologizing. "You're welcome," Rose said, stroking the mule's neck. "Now you stay off that hoof as much as you can. Let it heal proper." What Rose didn't know was that she was being watched. 50 feet away, concealed behind a large pile of hay bales beside an abandoned barn, Jeremiah "Bear" McAllister stood frozen, his massive frame perfectly still as he observed the scene before him. He'd been tracking his mule for 2 days, ever since Samson had spooked and run off during a thunderstorm. Bear had expected to find him injured, maybe tangled in brush or stuck in a ravine. But he hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected her. The woman was large, substantially built, as folks said politely, though Bear knew the crueler terms people used. But that wasn't what held his attention. It was the gentleness in her movements, the patience in her voice, the way she'd endured being kicked without anger or retaliation. It was how she'd torn her own clothing to bandage an animal that wasn't hers, how she'd shared her water without hesitation, how she'd murmured encouragement to a creature that had every reason to distrust humans. Bear had been in the mountains for 12 years, living mostly alone since his wife died in childbirth. He'd seen plenty of women in that time, pretty saloon girls, proper townsfolk, even a few female trappers. But he'd never seen anyone quite like this woman, who treated his stubborn, ornery mule with such pure kindness. Something shifted in Bear's chest, something he hadn't felt in over a decade. Recognition. Want. Need. He watched as she gathered her laundry basket and continued toward the creek, leaving Samson to rest in the shade. Only after she disappeared around the bend did Bear emerge from his hiding place. Samson greeted him with a guilty bray. "I know, old friend," Bear said, examining the bandaged hoof. "She did good work. Better than I could have done. He stroked the mule's neck where the woman had touched it. Who was she, boy? That angel who fixed you up? Samson just snorted, already half asleep in the afternoon heat. Bear made a decision then and there. He was going to find that woman. He was going to learn her name, and if the universe was merciful, he was going to make her understand that she was the most beautiful thing he'd seen in 12 years of mountain solitude. Bear spent the next 2 days asking subtle questions around Copper Springs. He learned her name, Rose Sullivan. He learned she worked for Mrs. Chen's laundry. He learned she lived alone, had no family, and kept mostly to herself. He also learned how people treated her. "Oh, the fat washerwoman," one shopkeeper said dismissively. "Rose, I think. Poor thing. Can't imagine what kind of man would want someone built like that." Bear's hands had clenched into fists, but he'd kept his temper. Barely. On the 3rd day, Bear entered the Silver Dollar Saloon just as the sun was setting. He needed supplies before heading back to his mountain cabin, and the general store was closed. The saloon owner, Dutch, sold basic provisions from a back room. Bear ordered whiskey while Dutch went to fetch the supplies. The saloon was moderately busy, miners finishing their shifts, gamblers starting their evening games, the usual crowd. Then Rose walked in. She looked uncomfortable, clutching a bundle of clean shirts. "Mr. Patterson's order," she said to the bartender quietly. "Mrs. Chen said to deliver them here." "Patterson's not here yet," the bartender said. "You can wait or come back." "I'll wait, thank you." "Bah." Rose moved to stand near the door, trying to be inconspicuous. Bear watched her from his position at the bar, his heart beating faster just at the sight of her. Then he heard the laughter. 3 miners at a corner table had noticed Rose. One of them, a lean, cruel-faced man Bear recognized as Chet Morrison, raised his voice deliberately. "Hey, look what waddled in. The fat laundry girl. Did you bring us our washing, sweetheart, or did you eat it?" His companions roared with laughter. Other patrons chuckled, glancing at Rose to gauge her reaction. Rose's face turned red, but she kept her eyes down. "I'm just delivering Mr. Patterson's order." "Delivering?" Another miner joined in. "Must have taken you all day to waddle here from Mrs. Chen's. What is that, 200 yards? Did you have to stop for a snack halfway?" More laughter, louder now. People were actively watching, enjoying the entertainment. "I bet she charges by the pound," Chet continued, emboldened by his audience. "Hey, Rose, how much do you weigh? We got a livestock scale out back. Want to find out?" Rose's hands trembled, but she said nothing. Bear saw tears forming in her eyes, even as she tried to maintain dignity. "Come on, don't be shy." Chet stood and walked toward her. "Let's see if you're heavier than a mule. I got money on you being—" He never finished the sentence. Bear moved with startling speed for a man his size. His hand shot out and grabbed Chet by the throat, lifting him 6 inches off the ground. "What did you say?" Bear's voice was quiet, deadly calm. Chet made choking sounds, his hands scrabbling at Bear's iron grip. The entire saloon went silent. "I asked you a question." Bear's voice remained conversational. "What did you say about her?" I was just—" Bear threw Chet across the room. The miner crashed into a table, sending cards, coins, and glasses flying. Before anyone could react, Bear had picked up a chair and smashed it against the bar, splintering wood everywhere. "Anyone else got something to say about Rose?" Bear's voice rose to a roar. "Anyone else want to mock her, insult her, make her feel less than human?" He picked up another chair and threw it through the front window. Glass exploded outward. The bartender ducked behind the bar. "She's the kindest woman in this God-forsaken town." Bear overturned a table, sending bottles crashing. "She helped my mule, bandaged him, gave him water, spoke gentle words when he was in pain. And this is how you treat her? Like she's a joke?" He grabbed a whiskey bottle and hurled it at the mirror behind the bar, which shattered spectacularly. Dutch emerged from the back room, saw the destruction, and wisely retreated. Chet's friends tried to rush Bear. He caught the first one with a massive fist to the jaw, sending him sprawling. The second got an elbow to the gut that folded him like a cheap tent. "She's my woman," Bear roared, his voice shaking the rafters. "And anyone who disrespects her answers to me. You got that? Mine!" He turned to face the entire saloon, his massive chest heaving, his eyes wild. "Spread the word. Rose Sullivan is under my protection. Anyone who mocks her, insults her, or so much as looks at her wrong will deal with Jeremiah McAllister. And I promise you, his voice dropped to that dangerous quiet again, you don't want that. The silence was absolute. Even the piano player had fled. Bear turned to Rose, who stood frozen by the door, her eyes wide with shock. His expression softened completely. "Miss Sullivan," he said gently, as if he hadn't just destroyed half the saloon, "would you permit me to walk you home?" Rose stared at him. This giant, terrifying mountain man who'd just demolished a saloon and beaten 3 men was looking at her like she was something precious. You're the one whose mule," she whispered. "Samson." "Yes, ma'am. You saved his leg, probably his life. He's healing up fine thanks to you." Bear extended his hand. "And I've been trying to work up courage to thank you proper. Seems I picked a poor time for introductions." Rose looked at his offered hand, at the destroyed saloon, at the groaning miners on the floor. Then she looked at Bear's face, rough, scarred, weathered by years in the mountains, and saw something that made her breath catch. He was looking at her the way no one ever had, with admiration, with respect, with something that might have been wonder. "You called me your woman," Rose said quietly. "I did. I shouldn't have. That was presumptuous. I don't own you, and I got no right to claim you." Bear's rough voice carried genuine regret. "But I needed these people to understand you're not alone anymore, that you've got someone who'll stand up for you." "Gee, why?" "Because 3 days ago I watched you show more kindness to a stubborn mule than most people show to each other. Because I saw you get kicked and you didn't get angry. You just kept helping. Because I've been living alone in the mountains for 12 years, and in 5 minutes you showed me more goodness than I've seen in all that time combined." He looked directly into her eyes. "Because you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, and I don't give a damn what anyone else thinks about that." Rose felt tears spill over, but they weren't tears of shame anymore. "You destroyed the saloon. I'll pay for it. You beat up those men. They deserved worse. The whole town will talk. Let them." Bear's voice was firm. "I meant what I said, Rose. You're under my protection now, if that's acceptable to you." Rose looked around at the destruction, broken chairs, shattered bottles, the gaping hole where the window used to be. It should have horrified her. Instead, she felt something else entirely. For the first time in years, she felt safe. "I accept," she said quietly. "And thank you." Bear's face lit up with a smile that transformed his rough features into something almost gentle. "Then let me walk you home, Miss Sullivan. We got a lot to talk about." The news of the saloon brawl spread through Copper Springs like wildfire. By the next morning, everyone knew. The mountain man called Bear had declared Rose Sullivan his woman and destroyed half the silver dollar to prove it. Opinions were divided. "That man's crazy," Mrs. Patterson told her husband. "Violent, dangerous. Poor Rose is probably terrified." "Poor Rose looked pretty comfortable holding his arm when he walked her home," Mr. Patterson countered, having witnessed the aftermath. "And you know what else I noticed? She was smiling. First time I've seen that girl smile in 3 years. "Well, I think it's romantic," young Emma Garcia sighed to her friends. "Like something from a dime novel, the fierce mountain man defending the maiden's honor." "She's no maiden," someone muttered. "She's a fat washerwoman." Emma rounded on them. "She's a human being who's been treated like dirt. Maybe it takes someone who actually sees her to recognize her worth." Dutch, the saloon owner, was more pragmatic. When Bear showed up the next morning with $200 in gold, more than enough to cover damages and then some, Dutch just nodded. "No hard feelings." "None. You were defending someone who needed defending. Wish I'd had the stones to do it myself." Dutch pocketed the gold. "But Bear, next time you feel the need to make a dramatic statement, maybe do it outside. Glass is expensive." Bear actually laughed, a sound that startled everyone in earshot. "Deal." Rose, meanwhile, was experiencing something completely foreign. Protection. When she went to the general store, Mr. Hopkins, who'd previously made snide comments about her size, greeted her respectfully and gave her excellent service. When she collected laundry from the boarding house, the owner, Mrs. Callahan, who'd always been cold, offered her tea. The change was remarkable and immediate. Word had spread. Bear McAllister had claimed Rose Sullivan as his woman. And Bear McAllister was not a man to be trifled with, but it was more than just fear of Bear's wrath. Something else was happening. People were actually looking at Rose, really looking, and asking themselves why a mountain man who could have anyone would choose her. And some of them, the honest ones, were coming to uncomfortable realizations about their own prejudices. On the third day after the saloon incident, Bear came to Mrs. Chen's laundry to find Rose. "Miss Sullivan, I was wondering if you'd take a walk with me. There's something I'd like to show you." Rose wiped her hands on her apron. Mrs. Chen, who'd been watching the unfolding situation with quiet approval, nodded. "Go on, Rose. Your work's done for the day." They walked to the edge of town where Samson was tethered, his hoof fully healed now. The mule greeted Rose with a happy bray, nuzzling her hand. "He remembers you," Bear said with a smile. "Been asking after you in his way. Mules are loyal creatures. They don't forget kindness." Rose stroked Samson's neck. "He's healing well. Thanks to you." Bear was quiet for a moment. "Rose, I need to be honest about something. When I called you my woman in that saloon, I wasn't thinking clearly. I was just reacting. Seeing you hurt, seeing them mock you, it made something in me snap." Rose's heart sank. "So you didn't mean it?" "That's not what I'm saying." Bear turned to face her fully. "I'm saying I had no right to claim you without asking first. No right to speak for you or make decisions about your life. That was wrong, even if my intentions were good." He took a deep breath. "So I'm asking now, proper-like. Rose Sullivan, would you permit me to court you? To spend time with you, get to know you, let you get to know me? No pressure, no expectations, just a chance." Rose stared at him. "You want to court me?" "I do." "Why?" "Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since I watched you help Samson. Because you're kind, patient, and gentle, qualities in short supply out here. Because when you speak, your voice is like music. Because your smile could light up the darkest night." He paused. "And because I don't need anything but you. No fortune, no big house, no fancy things, just you. If you'll have me." Tears streamed down Rose's face. I'm not what men want. I'm fat. I work in a laundry. I have nothing to offer." "Stop." Bear's voice was firm but gentle. "You're everything I want. I don't care what other men think. I don't care what society says you should look like. I know what I saw 3 days ago, a woman with the biggest heart I've ever encountered. That's what I want. That's what I need." He reached out and gently wiped away her tears with his calloused thumb. "You don't have to answer now. Take your time. Think about it. But know this, I'm not going anywhere. I'll wait as long as it takes." Rose looked up at this massive, rough mountain man who somehow saw beauty where everyone else saw only flaws, who destroyed a saloon to defend her honor, who was standing here with such raw vulnerability in his eyes, asking for a chance. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes. Yes, I'll let you court me." A smile broke through her tears. "But you have to promise not to destroy any more saloons. Mrs. Chen says the whole town's nervous about what you'll do next." Bear laughed, that wonderful, rare sound. "I promise. My saloon-destroying days are over. From now on, I'll express my feelings with words instead of furniture." He offered her his arm, and Rose took it. As they walked back toward town, Rose felt something fundamental shift inside her. For years she'd believed the cruel words, the mockery, the implication that she was less than human because of her size. But Bear's fierce defense, his genuine admiration, his simple statement that he didn't need anything but her, it was changing something. Maybe, just maybe, she was worth more than she'd been told. Maybe she deserved kindness, respect, and even love. And maybe, just maybe, she'd found all three in the least likely place, in the heart of a mountain man who saw her true beauty when no one else could. Over the following weeks, Bear courted Rose with a sincerity that gradually won over even the most skeptical townspeople. He wasn't smooth or sophisticated. He was blunt, direct, sometimes awkward. But his devotion was unmistakable. He brought her wildflowers from the mountains every other day. He fixed the broken step at Mrs. Chen's laundry that everyone had complained about for months. He taught her to ride Samson, who was now completely devoted to Rose. He read to her from books he'd collected over the years, poetry, adventure stories, natural history, but most importantly, he listened. He asked about her life, her dreams, her fears, and when she spoke, he gave her his complete attention, as if nothing in the world mattered more than her words. Rose found herself opening up in ways she never had before. She told him about her childhood, about losing her parents, about the years of mockery and rejection. She confessed her deepest fear, that she was unlovable, undesirable, worth less than other women because of how she looked. Bear listened to all of it, his expression growing increasingly troubled. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Rose, I need to tell you about my wife." Rose's heart clenched. He'd mentioned her death, but never the details. Her name was Sarah. She was tiny, barely 5 feet, thin as a reed. Everyone said we looked ridiculous together, me being so big and her so small. But we loved each other, and we didn't care what people thought. He stared at the mountains, lost in memory. When she got pregnant, the doctor warned us it might be dangerous. Her body was too small, he said, to carry a baby safely. We should have listened, but we wanted a family so badly. His voice grew rough. She went into labor 3 weeks early. I rode 12 hours through a blizzard to get the doctor. But by the time we got back, she was gone. The baby, too. A little girl. They died because Sarah's body couldn't handle what it was being asked to do. Tears rolled down his weathered cheeks. I loved Sarah with everything I had, but her body, the same petite frame that society praised, that made her beautiful by their standards, it killed her. And our daughter. He turned to Rose. "Do you understand what I'm saying? Society tells women they should be small, delicate, fragile. But fragile things break, Rose. Fragile things can't always do what needs doing. You're not fragile. You're strong. You're built for this harsh world in a way Sarah never was. And that's beautiful to me. That's valuable." Rose was crying openly now. I never thought of it that way. Because no one ever let you. Bear took her hands in his. But I'm telling you now, your body is perfect, not despite its size, but including its size. You're built for survival, for hard work, for enduring. That's what I need in a partner. Not someone society deems pretty, but someone who can handle what life throws at us. He pulled her into a gentle embrace. "I don't need anything but you, Rose. Not money, not status, not a woman who looks like everyone else. Just you, exactly as you are." And the words broke something open in Rose's chest. Years of shame, of self-hatred, of believing she was less than others. In Bear's arms, she finally understood that her worth wasn't determined by society's narrow standards. She was valuable. She was desirable. She was enough. 2 months into their courtship, trouble arrived in the form of Chet Morrison and his cousins. They'd been stewing over their humiliation in the saloon, and they'd decided to do something about it. Rose was walking home from the laundry one evening when 3 men blocked her path. "Well, look who it is," Chet sneered. "The mountain man's pet pig." Rose tried to step around them, but they moved to block her. "We've been thinking," one of the cousins said. "Maybe we were too harsh that night in the saloon. Maybe we should apologize, properly." His smile was nasty. "Why don't you come with us, Rose? We'll make it real nice." Fear shot through Rose. These men weren't interested in apologies. They wanted revenge on Bear by hurting her. Bear's up in the mountains checking his trap lines," Chet interrupted. "Won't be back for 2 days. Plenty of time for us to talk." They moved closer, and Rose realized she was in real danger. She opened her mouth to scream, and was cut off by a massive hand clamping over Chet's shoulder. "She's wrong." Bear's voice was colder than mountain ice. "I'm right here." He'd returned early, suspicious of the cousin's recent arrival in town. His instincts had been correct. What happened next was quick and brutal. Bear didn't destroy property this time. He simply, efficiently, rendered 3 men unconscious with precise blows. When Sheriff Dawson arrived, drawn by the commotion, he found Chet and his cousins groaning on the ground. "They threatened her," Bear said simply. "I stopped them." The sheriff looked at Rose, who nodded confirmation. He sighed. "Chet, you and your boys are banned from Copper Springs. Pack up and leave by morning. If I see you again, I'll arrest you for assault." After the sheriff left with the cousins, Bear turned to Rose. She was shaking, adrenaline still coursing through her. "I'm sorry," Bear said quietly. "I should have been here. Should have protected you. You did protect me. You came when I needed you." Rose threw her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. "You always protect me." Bear held her close, and in that moment, he made a decision. "Rose Sullivan," he said, pulling back just enough to look at her face. "I know we've only been courting 2 months. I know by society's standards we should wait longer. But I'm a mountain man, not a society gentleman. And mountain men don't waste time when they know what they want." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple gold ring with a small stone, not a diamond, but a piece of polished turquoise. "I don't have much. My cabin, my trap lines, my mule, and this ring that belonged to my grandmother. But I'm offering you everything I have, everything I am. Marry me, Rose. Be my wife. Let me spend the rest of my life showing you how valuable, how beautiful, how absolutely perfect you are." Rose stared at the ring, at this rough mountain man kneeling in the dusty street, at the future he was offering. "Yes," she whispered, "yes, I'll marry you." Bear's face split into a grin. He stood, lifted Rose off her feet and spun her around. Something she'd been told her whole life was impossible because of her size, but Bear made it look effortless. "I don't need anything but you," he shouted to the gathering crowd. "Do you hear me? This woman is everything I'll ever need." And for the first time in her life, Rose believed it. She was enough, more than enough. She was everything. The cabin in the mountains above Copper Springs was small but comfortable. Rose had made it a home. Curtains on the windows, herbs growing in pots, Samson grazing contentedly in the nearby meadow. Bear came in from checking his trap lines to find Rose sitting by the fire, knitting something small. Very small. "Is that—" He couldn't finish the question, afraid to hope. Rose looked up with a radiant smile. "Yes, in about 6 months." Bear crossed the cabin in 2 strides, dropping to his knees beside her chair. His large hand covered her still flat stomach reverently. "Are you scared?" Rose asked. "After Sarah—" "No," his voice was firm. "Sarah was small and fragile. You're strong and built for this. Our baby's got the best possible mother, someone who can handle anything the world throws at her." He looked up at her, his eyes shining. "I told you, Rose, I don't need anything but you, but everything we build together, our life, our family, our home, that's a blessing I never thought I'd have again. And it's all because you showed kindness to a stubborn mule." Rose laughed, running her fingers through his hair. "Best decision I ever made." "Second best," Bear corrected, grinning. "First best was saying yes when I asked to court you." Outside, Samson brayed, probably demanding dinner. Bear chuckled and stood. "I'll feed him. You rest." As Bear headed outside, Rose touched her stomach and smiled. She'd been told her whole life that she was too much, too big, too fat, too undesirable. But Bear had shown her the truth. She was exactly right. Not too much, not too little. Just exactly, perfectly herself. And that was more than enough.